Yo, Sarada just did what? Boruto manga right now is going crazy. The manga has just went to a whole new level, different directions. The plot itself has finally culminated into something that is not only action-packed, but also definitely a showcase and a demonstration of the growth of these characters and ultimately the maturity of these characters to understanding themselves, understanding their powers, understanding what they want out of life, and so much more. So without further ado, let's talk about Boruto chapter 21 because yeah, Sarada, Boruto, Koji, and so much more needs to be addressed. And before we continue, if you would hit that subscribe button and that bell, I'd greatly appreciate it. You get more videos like this one. Okay, so hands down, this chapter of Boruto was yet again another demonstration that the manga is back to showing progression, not only on the aspect of seeing Boruto doing his thing or whatnot, but also just yet again even further expanding on the growth of Sarada Uchiha. For me personally, if it hasn't been the whole Boruto Kawaki situation, another character from all the way back, even in the OG Boruto series, that I always felt like was an interesting character, could definitely hold their own and ultimately hold the reader's attention and overall expectations, would be Sarada Uchiha. With the last chapter, we've seen her finally starting to showcase and demonstrate the abilities of her Mangekyo Sharingan. Obviously, they incorporated a few different elements of showcasing why she was able to finally tap into that power and ultimately utilize it. This time around, this chapter showcases and demonstrates even further a couple of aspects of the character. I really appreciate and respect the way that they're maneuvering and ultimately writing the character, where with this chapter, it really gave a little bit more context to, yeah, there is a level of course, her with the whole Boruto situation, but then there's also the aspect of her ultimate goal of becoming Hokage. So they're really making sure to not let go of certain aspects of the character that from the beginning were essentially aspects and qualities that made this character more multi-layered, more multifaceted. This character showing more cases of believability in the character. Like, this character has multiple goals and is aiming for them, and I really appreciate and respect it. Because in this chapter, Sarada demonstrates and we kind of get a little bit more clarity on her Mangekyo Sharingan abilities. Initially, I thought it was more so Kamui, where essentially like what Obito could do, where Obito would kind of go to different dimensions. This one is more so showcasing that, seemingly based off what Mitsuki said, it's like a gravitational pull. So essentially she kind of has like a gravity control, and even more so it amplified the character, which I've said for a while now that the Boruto manga definitely is slowly implementing elements to taking the Naruto Boruto verse into a more Dragon Ball Z grandiose aspect. Because if you think about it, where the series is at right now, the characters are, and don't get me wrong, towards the end of Shippuden the characters were flying, but the characters are essentially flying now. We've seen Boruto back in OG Boruto, we've seen Kawaki, and now Sarada using her gravitational powers can also fly, which is awesome. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I bet by the end of this series these characters are going to be doing some insane feats of their own, and it's going to be just something very much so worthwhile, and I'm excited for that. Because the battle between Sarada and Ryu was decided in this chapter as well, after really diving into again a lot of the aspects of her character, the whole, I guess you would argue, love triangle between herself, class rep, and Boruto. That thing has kind of been something that, while this chapter didn't 110% yet again amplify Sarada's feelings per se, like on full display for Boruto, it just was once again an addition to the character and really diving into who she is and what she wants out of life. So I respect that they're continuing on that aspect, which it seems as though the story has really slowly but surely started to amplify and demonstrate the love triangle between Boruto, Sarada, and Sumire, even throughout all this intense and hectic stuff that's going on. But at the end of the day, that could also be a metaphor of love as a battlefield. Although I do want to add that I think that it's a bit unfair that while they're addressing a lot of the feelings between these characters or whatnot and their thoughts, that class rep, because she's more of like, you know, the scientific healer-esque type, that we don't really get to see more of her opinion on things. I mean, I guess she kind of started things off with some of the aspects of her just being direct and genuine about how she feels about Boruto, and this chapter gave a little bit more of context of kind of flashbacks to her saying to Sarada, hey, you don't care that there's going to be girls that are after him and liking him or whatnot. So it's pretty much been cemented, Sumire's feelings. But I guess considering that Sarada's amplifying and ramping up now, it would be nice at some given point to see them straight up clearly addressing address each other, and Sarada kind of not necessarily go back and forth with her on the feelings, but just really see where this whole ship is going to go between the three of them. And then on another note, there was something very intense in this chapter that I was like, yo, let's go, because basically Boruto, after seeing this whole situation, he was curious as to, wait a minute, because you always got to remember that Koji is many steps ahead of everything. Koji already understands the different paths, the different futures, the different ways things could go, and he's like, yo, you knew that something horrible would happen, and you still essentially allowed whatever happened to kind of go down. And so you could definitely see that the frustration is there within Boruto. Thankfully, he keeps it respectful for the most part, because at the end of the day, Koji has been a sensei similar to Sasuke to him, so he doesn't necessarily go completely off the rails with Koji, but you could definitely see that he is not the most happiest with some of the decisions that Koji has made in regards to other people suffering in this battle, where Boruto feels like, if I would just, be able to intervene, this wouldn't have happened. Which, just being honest, Koji is still more so, in my opinion, in the right, simply because at the end of the day, he understands what will happen if X, Y, and Z goes down, so he's trying his best to navigate this whole situation to the best possible outcome. Boruto is right now in the moment, and yes, he's definitely rightfully so to feel how he feels of, seeing some of his comrades or people that he cares about in general going through hardship, or just ultimately taking losses and whatnot. But at the same time, Koji is looking at it as, I know if this goes this way, then this is what's going to happen, so let's go that way and we'll get to the best possible outcome. I don't want to compare it to the whole checkers and chess analogy, but essentially Koji is just many steps ahead and thinking of the overall game opposed to the moment right now. But even more so, it moves further into the whole aspect of Boruto questioning, like, okay, what about the whole situation with Konohamaru and Matsuri? Are you just gonna allow that to go down? Is that gonna be an L for Konohamaru? Like, is he gonna get, destroyed in this aspect? What's happening there? And Koji at this point, because he understands that, wait a minute, not only is Boruto getting upset, he's also catching on that I'm allowing things to transpire to get to a certain outcome. And at the same time, Koji, he's not a bad guy. He's not gonna sit there and lie to Boruto's face. So he's kind of like, yo, just chill, essentially. And that's where Boruto finally does what a lot of people are hoping, but at the same time, it could either be a giant mistake, or it could be that Boruto is about to essentially warp and change reality with the decision that he makes. Because in the midst of the battle, shortly after Sarada had her just epic and iconic moment in the battle against Ryu, finally finishing that off, which I'm curious what that is going to mean for the future of Shinki. Is he going to be untreeified now? Obviously, they have to get the thorn bulb and move that forward, but I'm curious if Shinki's going to be reintroduced, and Gaara, and just so many different aspects. But going back to it, Boruto has now been reintroduced into the story and has a really epic entrance and a really epic moment with the whole situation of essentially saving Konohamaru from Matsuri, because Matsuri was essentially on a rampage warpath, ready to end it all with Konohamaru after the last couple of chapters went down, and Boruto immediately shows up and finishes things off. Where the mistake situation could be in play is the fact that Boruto was told, hey, you gotta stay out the way right now. In order for us to reach the outcome that is most favorable, you need to be just here with me on the side until we get to a certain point. Boruto jumping in play now is going to put him back on Jura's radar, and ultimately could potentially lead to an outcome that maybe Koji already foreseen and won't be the best course of action or best route that, Koji has seen. Because with two of the divine trees essentially being defeated at this particular point, now Jura is definitely going to be on guard, on alert, and ultimately this is going to move things forward majorly. Honestly, this chapter was probably one of the biggest pieces of progression we've had in quite some time. Like, yeah, the last chapter was a big one because Sarada finally started to utilize her Mangekyo Sharingan, but this one in particular, we just essentially finished off two battles, and unless the other divine trees immediately show up right then and there, we have two bulbs now to release Moegi and Shinki from their, in captivity, and essentially that's going to be a big piece to finishing this off. But at the same time, unless Koji is able to figure out a different route, right now Boruto is going to be on Jura's radar, and based on what has been said, Jura is nothing to play with. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things go moving forward now that Boruto went into a path that, from what Koji has seen, isn't a great outcome. But at the end of the day, considering the fact that the title of this series is Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, if anybody could avert disaster, if anybody is able to create a new reality, so to speak, it can be Boruto. I mean, let's not forget of everything we've seen Boruto being capable of, everything that was said, everything that was showcased. I mean, homie can use the flying Raijin. And by no means am I trying to say that, yo, this is going to be an easy battle by any stretch of the imagination, because we still have two incredibly powerful foes. But at the very least, we see that some of this battle has already been ultimately finished, and that pretty much leaves us with a few things left to kind of figure out. Obviously, the remaining divine trees, also Code, what's going to happen with his character moving forward. Is he still going to be a major contender in all of this? And of course, the major shipping situation that the fandom is going crazy over with Boruto, Sumire, Sarada. If you are interested in that aspect, I am very curious to see what the watchers of this video think, which way that is going to go. I mean, for the most part, this chapter has kind of solidified certain aspects, but definitely you never know which way the story is going to turn, and Boruto right now just created a whole new direction, so it's only a matter of time until some major aspects that fans are looking forward to finally gets addressed. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day.
My heart's broke, but it's time to move on. Even though it hurts, I must let it go, and I can't let you know, but now it's time to grow.